I'm going to start the learning sponsors. Excuse me. Friends of the Year of Learning, Friends of Mount Skotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bat Pinchas, Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Sri Ben Zev, Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen, those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emeritus, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Mishlomi Yisachar, Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinza Bat Yosef Chaim Vachava, Kanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Vachana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Alevi Vitzipora, Isser Ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Vachana, Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim, Marsha Bronner in memory of her husband, Harav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel, A Month of Learning, Reuven and Susan Podolsky in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Pinchas, Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his mother, Dacia Gittel Bas Meir Halevi, as well again Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his father, Meir Ben Yaakov, A Week of Learning, Susan Fruchten Kramer, in memory of her late husband, Rav Shmuel Aaron Ben Ephraim Fischel, Marcia Federbush, in memory of her father, Menachem Mendel Ben Shlomo. May Hashem is having Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shematzliah, and Chol B'nai Israel, good Gaben Shtia.
Oh, man. Well, I owe you a half a daf from yesterday, and we're going to do it. It's just to get to the place where we're in 10b, Yud Bays, Yud Amud Bays, the last skinny line before the fat line. I want to explain something outside of because this is a incredibly beautiful discussion. In general, let's say you had a kilo of food or a kilo of gold, and I for somehow made a half of it useless, etc. Well, the other half is still gold. The other half is still food. It has value. But when I talk about a machine or an organism that has a function, if I destroy the function or the life in an organism, it's questionable whether what remains is still a percentage of the original thing. I'll explain what I mean. I think it's if you had a half a kilo of food, I contaminated half a kilo. No, the other half is still food. Nothing changed. But if I have an animal that's alive, an ox is a thing that works. It can carry things. It does its job. When I kill an ox, it's true that its body has value. It's trash. I have value. But is it part of the original? Is it a percentage of, oh no, some of the ox still remains. Oh, there's nothing, it's just junk. You understand? When you take away the function, it's a dead ox. Well, it's just not it's an ox not in such good shape, but it's an ox. No, it's junk, it's trash. It's trash. What's the difference? If I have to always return to you, if I have to return to you the object that I damaged, well, I can't say, well, listen, oh look, you still have $20 worth of ox there. The ox was $100. I'll pay $100 and I'll pay $80 and fix it up. Say, buddy, you have to pay me $100. I need to buy an ox. You can't. Yeah, I can't use 20% dead ox. It's nothing. I need 100% good ox. Okay, that's one way. Okay, so we don't know when we destroy an organism or a machine. Yes, in anything when we have something that has a function, and I destroy the function, even though there's monetary value left in the physical residue, we don't know if it's a remnant. So it's saying now, if my animal killed somebody else's animal, killed his ox. The ox was worth $100 while it was alive. Now the body, we can sell the carcass for $10. I say, listen, what's the problem? He still got $10. I damaged it for $90. I'll pay the $90. That's one way to look at it. The other is no. There's no ox here at all. There's just trash. You have to give him $100, okay? Yeah, you want to take the trash, you take it. But that's a question. So we have to see. That's where our Gemara starts today, and to determine this question. That's one question. We're later going to segue into other problems, okay? One, in other words, whether a person replaces the damaged object, the damaged ox, or just tops it up till it gets back to, until the damagee gets his original value. Secondly, we have a problem of what happens, at what point do we determine the value of the dead ox? In other words, when it dies or when we get the base. Then you realize a dead ox can be worth 20 at the time of its death, and 5 by the time we get to basin. When do we evaluate? That's the second question. A third question is, who has to deal with the physical object? You understand? The ox is in a hole. Who's going to lift it up? Who has to pay? Who has to take it out of the hole? All those things are today's opening. Okay, let's do it together from the beginning. The first thing is an incredibly intriguing, it's a big problem logically and philosophically, by the way. It's just a big problem. You say when you take away, physical value and function are not identical. They're not identical. Okay, we can become. It's a big problem. So now let's take a look. We open up and we say, okay, we're right at the two. That last word, the last skinny line. We said in the Mishnah a very strange language. I am obligated to pay for the payment of its damage. I'm obligated on the damage. We're obligated on the tashlumin. It's an extra word. The answer is it must be word. Instead of saying payment, I have to pay the completion of the damage. Ella, okay. Chavti b'nisko loktani. It doesn't say I'm obligated on its damage. Ella b'tashlumin nisko. I have to pay for the completion of its damage, which really teaches me what Tanina lahada Tanah Rabbanan. So our Mishnah seems to concur with what we learned. The way the Mishnah Torah concurs with what we learned in a brisa. Tashlumi nezek. When the pasuk says they asked them that when the rabbis use the word tashlumi nezek, completion of damages, it means what? That the damagee, the original owner, has to deal with the corpse. In other words, what exactly to solve this problem? So if my animal killed somebody else's animal, and now the corpse is worth 10, what happens? Do I have to pay him 100 and keep the trash? No. He takes the animal. He takes the animal. I only have to pay 90. I have to only top up mashlim. I only have to complete the value. I took away 90. I have to add 90. We don't worry about the function. If the dead animal is worth 10, I owe him 90, and that's all it is. So the owners, the original nizak, the damagee, has to keep the corpse, and the damager tops it up. Now that's what the Gemara says now. Now get ready. What's the source? We're going to give 3 sources for the same point. Where do we know that the damager doesn't have to pay 100%, but merely top up whatever was taken away from the value of the animal? Because the pasuk said here. Now we have different sources. This is when a human damages an animal. Imagine a man slammed an animal over the head and killed it. No, maka nefesh behema yishalmena. We learned in the pasuk if a person smites the life of an animal, yishalmena. Instead of reading, understanding it, but the simple understanding that he has to pay for it, elawat yashli meno, he has to complete it. So therefore, if he killed the animal, the corpse is worth 10, he pays 90, and the damagee it remains with the corpse worth 10. Rav Kahana Mariachi says no. We use a different source. There's a second source that teaches me this principle. Where is that? This is talking about a watchman. So a watchman. It has to watch it, has to do guarding. If he's negligent in his guarding, so he is responsible. Okay, he is responsible for what he did. But let's say an accident happens. So the simple pasuk in the Torah is really explaining. The simple pasuk seems to be what? If a watchman guarded an animal and he did his job, but then another wild animal came and ripped the guarded animal to shreds, he'll bring a witness that the animal was ripped to shreds accidentally, and that's beyond his control, and he's not responsible to pay. That's what the simple pasuk says. I'm going to read you the pasuk. The simple reading it is: Im tarafi taref. If the animal the watchman is watching is ripped apart, Yevi'ehu aid, he shall bring a witness that it happened beyond his control. Hatreifa lo yishalem, he doesn't have to pay for the ripped up animal. He's completely exempt. That's the simple pshat in that pasuk. But we have a special drasha that teaches the same principle that we learned a minute ago. We say rather what? In tarif. It's incredible reading of the pasuk. If the animal will be ripped up, yevi'ehu, instead of reading what? That he should bring a witness and he shouldn't pay for the animal. The other way, ad treifa yishalem. In a case where he was responsible, he only pays up to the ripped up animal. A treifa atzmo lo yishalem, but the ripped up animal itself he doesn't pay for. Incredible drasha. The simple reading of the pasuk is really what he's talking about when he was killed and he doesn't pay. But in a case where he does pay, he pays up to the corpse and no more. So he only pays what? The difference and not for the corpse. Second proof of the same point. A third proof. Chizki Amar mihacha. We learn it from here. The hamesi hielo. We learn when it came to what? When a man's ox killed another man's ox, and he has to pay, and it says clearly, the pasuk says what? He has to pay an ox for an ox. Let me read you the pasuk. Oh no, da kishor nagacho. I'm reading the pasuk from the Torah. If it's known that ox, the damaging ox, was already a forewarned ox, mitmol shilshon from yesterday and the day before. Now that what? Now he doesn't watch it. Shalem yishalem shor tachas hashor. the owner has to pay what? Has to pay an ox for an ox. He pays an ox for an ox, and the corpse shall belong to him. How are we reading that? Okay, so what do we mean that the ox shall belong to him? Lenizak, to the damagee. So, a third point that in all three cases we learn that the damager pays the difference between the dead animal and the live animal, but he doesn't have to give 100% and keep the dead animal. The damagee gets it. Now, Bechizkiah also learned the same drasha of a when it said by a man's ox scoring another man's ox that the corpse is his lenizak, it belongs to the damagee. Says the Gemara, Atomer lenizak. How do you know? Here, I told you this many times in this class. Whenever we have every pronoun is understood by what's known as an antecedent. Here, if I say him, her, he, who is it? Well, it's the last noun that I know. That's the rule in all intelligent languages. That's the way it works. So you always define a pronoun by its antecedent. That's why I told you we have a problem at the beginning of Tehillim. That's what makes everybody crazy. Because the beginning of Tehillim says what? So in his Torah is his desire, and he meditates his Torah day and night. So Gemara says, whose Torah? I don't know what the antecedent is over here. Is it God's Torah or is his Torah? The Gemara decides what? It's both. You know what? The Torah starts out, it belongs to God, and after you work hard on it, it belongs to you. That's what the Gemara says. It's God's Torah. You work hard, now it's yours. Now it's yours. So, what is that? The Gemara is dealing with the problem of an unclear antecedent. So 1 second, he says that, and the corpse will belong to him. Who told you the him is, okay, you're right, we did say he had to pay, so it looks a little adjacent, but who told you the him is the damager? Maybe it's the damagee. Okay, so Gemara says, okay, so the answer is maybe it's the damager. Maybe the damager has to keep the corpse and pay 100%, not like we said. Amarti, he says, can you say such a thing? Lo kachaya. The pasuk doesn't work that way. What do you mean? So the Gemara says, ma lo kachaya. The Gemara says, what is the Brisa saying? It's not like that, because the pasuk demands that you cannot read it that it's the corpse goes to the damagee. Why? Amar Abaye, because he says, if you think that the corpse belongs to the damager, then you just had to write the one thing that the pasuk already wrote. Shor tachas ashor. You pay an ox for an ox. If I have to pay an ox for ox, that's 100%. It's clear that that the corpse goes to who? To the damager, and he pays an ox for an ox. He pays 100% to the damagee. Okay, so why? Once it said ox for ox, it says so why does the pasuk have to add the superfluous sentence? The corpse belongs to him. It's clear it has to be going on the damagee and not on the damager, because all of it would have automatically read it on the damager. So it's done. Now, what's the problem? We just learned 3 different sources for the same point. We can't stand that. That violates our primary rule of learning. I told you, in any Jewish context, in the yeshiva world, the worst crime you could commit is to be unnecessary. To speak without a cause is the worst crime you could commit. If you have nothing to say, be quiet. To speak without a reason, that's the worst problem. I don't know if you know, there was a guy, he had a fish store. This guy opened up a fish store next to a yeshiva. Believe me, that you open up anything next to a yeshiva, you got trouble. He opens up a fish store next to a yeshiva. He decides, and he becomes friendly. They all buy fish. It's good. Got a good relationship. He says, I should have a nice sign. Have a nice sign. So he puts up a nice fresh sign. It says, "Fresh fish sold here today." Beautiful. Fresh fish sold here today. He's so happy he's got a new sign. He has nachas. One of these Shiva guys comes out for a walk. He says, Maish, what is it? He says, what do you mean fresh fish sold here today? What are you selling? Stinking fish? Of course you're selling fresh fish. He says, you're right. So he takes a he wipes out fresh. It's just now, it says fish sold here today. A little later, the Shiva guy comes out. He says, Maish, he says, what? The sign. He says, what's wrong with the sign? He says, fish sold here today. What are you selling them tomorrow? Obviously, he's selling them today. Because he says, right, takes the thing, wipes out. It says, fish sold here. Fish sold here. So you go, Baruch Hashem, a good sign. The Shiva guy comes out. He says, Maish, he says, what? The sign. He says, what's wrong with the sign? He says, fish sold here. He says, what are you selling? Of course, he's selling them here. What are you selling them down the street? You're right. He takes out here. He says, now fish sold. He says, fish sold. A little later, the Shiva guy comes out. He says, Maish, he says, what? He says, the sign. What's wrong with my sign? He says, fish sold. He says, Maish, what are you giving them away? Of course you're selling them. He says, okay, but you have a sign that says fish. He said, you can't argue with that. The Shiva guy comes in. He says, Maish, he says, the sign. What's wrong with the sign? He says, fish. He says, Maish, anybody can see you selling fish. He says, through the window. We didn't need to sign fish. So that's it. That's in the yeshiva. In the yeshiva, you cannot speak superfluously. We can't stay in the next room. Why? But why? I told you why. Because if that's not true, we could never take seriously the words of a wise person. Since we know that a wise person won't speak if he doesn't have something to say, we put work into what they say. We kill ourselves till we understand. No, they were saying something. They must have had a reason why they said that. It seems so obvious. Oh, that's what they must have meant. But if I can't rely on them, you said, if people would speak without a cause, then I can't invest all that effort. You said I can't do it. You see, that's the reason why. And that's why I told you, if you remember last week, I told you, that's why in the Mishnah Brura, in the book, the Sharat Sion, sometimes his source will be, he'll write a source, the Taz, the Magen Avraham, the Shulchan Aruch, the Shagasai. And sometimes the source is what? Pashut. It's self-evident, it's obvious. Why is he writing that? He's writing that so you won't drive yourself crazy. He says, listen, I didn't write this book for the biggest Talmidei Chachamim. There are people who don't know what you know. For you, it's obvious. I wrote it for people who don't know. Don't worry about it. Stop killing yourself. Stop worrying about it. You understand? It's a chesed to the learned person to tell them what. Don't look any further. You're right. This didn't need to be written for people who knew. I wrote it for the people who don't know. Don't look any further. So now you understand. So that was why we say. So once the pasuk told me so the same way as once the pasuk told me what something that would have made me know. Okay, that the damager took the body and then spoke extra. I know came to Tamei Chedek. Furthermore, now we just have three sources for the same thing. What's the obvious question? What do you need three sources for one thing? Who proves a thing? What are you running at the mouth? You're going to prove three times the same point? Listen, here's the answer. The tzricha. No, I needed all three. If the Torah hadn't taught it three times, I wouldn't have known it in all three cases. Remember, it taught me in the case of a man damaging an animal. It taught me in a case of a watchman being negligent about the animal he was guarding, and it taught to me about the case of an animal killing an animal. We need all three to tell us the leniency that the damager pays the difference and doesn't pay 100%. The damager gets the corpse and he pays the difference. Why? Because the ikos of Rachmana Makeh Behema Yishal Mena. Had the Torah taught me that when a man damages an animal, he has to pay the difference, it's lenient. I would say, you know why we're so lenient? Mishum de lo shchicha, because it's very uncommon. Usually, most humans don't go around, punching oxen in the face, and therefore we're lenient. I will trade for the shchicha. But when it comes to a case of an animal being attacked, when the watchman wasn't careful, since it's common, I'd say the Torah wasn't so lenient. Therefore, the Torah tell me no. Even in a case that's common, we still the watchman only pays for the difference and not for the whole animal. And treifa. And had you told me the other way, let's say you told me the case of the watchman being negligent about the animal being attacked, that he has to pay, that we're lenient and he only pays the difference. I would say, you know why we're so lenient? Because he doesn't directly cause the damage. It comes from his passive non-watching. It doesn't come from an action. But when a man kills an animal, to be yodayim, where he does an active damage, I would say you can't be so lenient. So I need both of those cases. No, but I had three cases. Had you told me both of these cases, that when the watchman was negligent and when a man killed the animal, in both those cases were still lenient, okay, I would say to you, yeah, but you know why? The watchman case is lenient because it's not common. Because it's, pardon me, the man killing an animal is lenient because it's not common for men to kill animals. And the watchman case is lenient because it's passive. It's not done actively. Okay, but when you come to the case where the animal kills an animal, okay, I need that case. Why the shchicha? Because it is common, so I think you can't be lenient, and it's also direct. It's not done passively. The animal directly damages. I'd say you can't be that lenient. Therefore, I had to have all three. What if you told me? One second. What if you just told me the case of an animal killing an animal? I would say, why can't I learn the other two? Mishum de mamono kamazik. I would say, you know what? That's why we're so lenient, because it's his money that's damaging. When it comes to a man damaging an animal, or even the watchman being negligent, which is a human doing the damage, the gufa mazik, it's the body of the human doing the damage. I'd say you can't be so lenient. Therefore, I needed all three. He says, one second. That this whole discussion, very nice theory, but the whole thing is academic. We don't need it. We don't need this. Everybody knows this without any pasuk teaching it to me. It's obvious that the corpse goes to the damagee and that the damager pays only the difference. How do I know? It's simple. Here, Rav just says, use your head. Thought experiment. Einstein's not one of my heroes, by the way. the world's crazy about him. But he did what everybody does, what Jews have always been doing. He did thought experiments. We do it all the time. We rather than knocking ourselves out in the laboratory all the time, we use our heads. It's much better to experiment in the head. You don't need all that smelly chemicals and and everything. He says use the head is better. He says do a thought experiment and you'll know that everything we said can't be. Why is that? He says why? He says Ella. Well, look, we just learned a few last couple of days. He says the cause of Rahman of Amasiel. He says Amalei Rakahan Rabbi. He says Ella time. He says you tell me the only reason you know that the damager pays the difference and doesn't keep the corpse. The cost of Rahman of Hamasiel loads because the pasuk wrote that the damagee takes the corpse. Would you really have thought that without that pasuk, that you really need a pasuk teacher? Otherwise, you would have thought that the damager has to keep the corpse and pay 100%. Get out of here. He says, Hashta. We just learned this 20 times the last couple of days. Hashta Islay Day Kama Trefos. Come on. If the damager has a storehouse full of a bunch of dead animals, he's got a bunch of carcasses. He's got a bunch of carcasses. They were $6 each. He's got a bunch of carcasses. Yoivle, he could have paid. He could have paid 100% of the dead ox with dead animals. Why is that? Because we learned because we learned in the Bryce already. Yoshiv. When we learned the word Yoshiv, we shall return. It was an extra word. L'rabo sabakesef. You can pay in kind. Vafilu subit. Even the worst. Even brand. So what's the problem? If I wanted to pay all day long my damages with dead animals, I can pay with dead animals. He says the day me buy. So what if I could take my corpses and pay the damagee to take the damagee's corpse and pay him with it? Is there any question? So therefore, there's no need for any pasuk. Isn't this incredible? There's no need for any pasuk to teach me that he pays the difference. It's obvious that he pays the difference because no matter what you say, even if you said the dead corpse is his, then what does he do next? He pays the dead corpse worth 10 and pays 90. It's always going to come out the same. So lo nitzucha. He says, you're making a mistake. He says, what we needed to learn was not that the damager tops up the damage. It came to teach me a separate point, which is what happens when the corpse degenerates between the death of the corpse and the time we get the corpse. Even a day. Things degenerate quickly. Okay, now he says, that's what we have to learn that if the corpse degenerated between the time of the death and between the time of the court case, it goes on the damagee. In other words, the second that the animal is killed, it belongs to the damagee, and anything happens between then and the court case is his loss. The Gemara says, 1 second. He says, are you really sure that that's true? He says, Lema pachas nebela Tanoi. 1 second. It looks to me like that's an argument of the Tanoim. I'm going to quote you an argument of Tanoim, and I'm going to show you that they really argued whether the devaluation of the corpse between the time of its death and the time of getting to the Beis Din is under debate who's responsible. Why? With the same passage we said before by the watchman, in tarfi aid. Okay, if it's ripped up, he should bring the witness and he shouldn't pay for the treifa, or he should pay until the treifa, like we learned. You'll be aidim with the first opinion says what? You'll be aidim shenitrif, while the watchman will bring witnesses that it was killed, accidentally by wild animals. The onus, okay, will be in a circumstance beyond his control, upater, and he's exempt. That's how the first opinion learns. Abba Sholem, he says, no, that's not what it means. It says the word aid could be trash, garbage. Yavi duda, he should bring the corpse, the garbage, the Beis Din. He should bring the corpse to Beis Din so that they should what? So that they should what? It's really talking about what? He should bring the corpse to the Beis Din. They should evaluate it at the time of what? At the time of the death, quickly. Okay, why? So that's how much they'll evaluate the damage. My love, isn't that exactly the argument? The second opinion said what? That interprets the pasuk saying that it was a case of negligence, and he has to bring the quickly to show what the damage was. Savar Pesach Level the Nizak. He believes that the degeneration of the corpse belongs to the Nizak, and that's why the watchman has to bring it quickly to show you what it was worth when it died, so you don't charge him more for what happens later. Umar, in the first opinion that said it wasn't talking about that case, it was really talking about the case where he doesn't have to pay. Savar the Mazikavi. He holds the other way. The reason I was reading that because he holds it really that the devaluation is the loss of the damager. Why says no, it's not the case. That's not the argument at all. He's the Kuli Alma, the Nizak. Everybody says like we said. The evaluation of the corpse is on the responsibility of the damagee. The only argument is the third point, which I mentioned to you earlier. Who's responsible to move the darn physical body around? That's also costs money. That's what they're arguing about. What? The first opinion, Labashol, are arguing who has to get the darn thing out of the hole. Okay, or to get it out of there. What are you going to do? And we're really talking about what? Where he was negligent. Okay, and therefore what? So one way to read it is what? The first way to read it is what? That he has to bring it. In other words, he has to bring the corpse to the basin, and it's his loss, or he has to pay the hauling fee. And the Tanakama believes what? That it's the damagee who has to pay the hauling fees, has to do it. I says 1 second. Tanya, we learned exactly that Achim held like Abba Shol, that it's the responsibility of the damager. Tanya, because we learned how do we know that it's the one who owns the pit who has to lift the animal up? He has to pay. Because it says Kesef Yoshiv Labala v'hames. He has to. No, it's a different drush, but the same argument. He should return the money to the owner v'hames, and he has to return also the corpse. In other words, he's responsible. Okay, he's also responsible for the moving of the corpse. Amarle is also responsible for the corpse. So that okay. And so really, we said what? So the argument is really what about the responsibility of moving and not about the generation. Amarle Abai Rava. Says, Rava, what are you talking about? High Torah Nevela, Hechidami. What's the case of the cost of moving the corpse? If you want to say it's a case where in the hole it's worth $1, and when it's up on the lip, and when it's taken up, it's worth $4. He says, who has to tell you that the damager has to do it? Kitarch, when he does it, he's helping himself. That's not a responsibility. If he hauls it up, he gains $3. Of course he's going to do it. It's to his benefit. Okay. Amarle says, he says, no, I'll tell you where the argument is. The Bebira Shav Yezuzah, it's a place where in the hole it's worth $1. The Aguda Nami Shav Yezuzah, on the lip it's still only worth $1. So then we have to worry who has to have the trouble of getting it out. Says the Gemara 1 second. Is there any such case? How can it be? How can it be that the corpse in the hole and the corpse on the top, which is worth to get it up, it's worth the same amount? What about the hauling charges? The answer is, and he says, yeah, no, there are cases like that. Why? We have economies like that, or for certain commodities. Why? In the Ha'amri Inchi, because you see, people say sometimes, Kashur B'mata Bazuza, he says the plank to buy a beam in the city costs $1, costs $1, Kashur B'dabra Bazuga. And to buy a beam out in the wilderness also costs what? Also costs $1. Sometimes the thing is in such demand, it doesn't matter where it is, you're going to pay the same price. It's not always the same. You're right. A lot of times there's distance or things like that, so it changes the price. That's how we do business. But a lot of times it's not. Amar Shmuel. Okay, now we have another very important thing. Everything we learned up till now makes sense by a damager. Okay, but you have to know that thieves. There are two types of thieves. We have a thief who sneaks in and takes it, a gana, but we have a thief who takes it from you by force, violently, a gazlan. Those guys, from the way the psukim are written, okay, it's clear that the second they steal, they become the owners, at least legally, to their detriment. They become the owners of what they stole. They take possession of what they stole. When a guy damages something, he's not taking possession of what he stole. When a guy steals something, he's taking possession of what he stole illegally, but he's doing it. So it makes sense that that if he steals something and it breaks, or he steals something and it dies, whatever happens. So does he get a right to say, like we said before? Oh, here, you take the remains and I'll top it off and pay back the 90. You take the $10 worth of junk and I'll pay back the 90, or no? So the rule is that by people who steal, they own it and they have to pay 100%. They keep the junk. They can't give back the junk and discount. But okay, but by damagers, we already learned that they can, right? That they can by a damager. The question is, what's the rule? And this is going to make it easy in 1 second. What's the rule of a borrower? A borrower, on the one hand, is a regular damager, like anybody else. He's not a thief. On the other hand, since a borrower has such a strict obligation, he has to pay even for accidental damage. Okay, even accidental damage. So maybe he's really like an owner, and he'll have the same rule as a thief, not because he's a thief, but because he also takes possession. So that's a debate. So let's read inside so it should all make sense. Amar Shmuel, Shmuel said, "Ein shamin lo legana v'lo legaslan." If either of the two types of thief stole something and it broke, and they have the shards, okay, or they have the dead animal, okay, we don't evaluate the shards or the corpse and say top it up, okay, but rather they pay 100%. Okay, that's all. He has to the thieves keep the junk and they pay everything. For the reason I told him. El and Azakin, okay, but we do, okay, but we do evaluate what for damages, like we've been learning for the last page. Naomi says, but I say a chiddush, I have a novel point, aflashoel, what that also the rule applies to a borrower. The Abba and Abba, who was Rav, was a nickname for Rav. Modally, Rav agrees to me. The great Rabbi Rav agrees to me. Now, what's the problem? We don't know what he's talking about. Which rule? Does the borrower follow? Did he mean the borrower follows the rule of the thief, or the borrower follows the rule of the damager? We don't know. The Gemara says he violates it. What do you mean? Achikamer, off the show, Shaman, do you mean what? With just that also for a borrower, we do evaluate just like we do for a damager? Biaba modally, and Rob agrees with me. Oh, Dilma Hachikamer, maybe this is what he meant. Vani Omer, I say off the show ain't shaman, but even for a borrower, we don't evaluate like a thief. Biaba modally, and Rob agrees. Tashma, come, I'll bring you a proof. I know exactly what to do. I'll bring you a case where Rob himself spoke, and you'll know the answer. Tashma, come, you'll hear the who gaver the shol naga michavre. A certain guy borrowed an axe from his friend, a borrower. Tabra, he broke it. Atala kami de Rav, he came in front of Rav for a judgment. Amarle, and Rav said to him, Shlimle nagamaya, give him a fine axe, give him back a whole axe. So you see what shmamina. So you hear clearly, shaman, okay, ain't shaman. You see clearly that the borrower has the same rule as the thief. We don't evaluate the shards. He has to pay 100% and keep the junk. You might say, nah. He says, it's not true what you said because you don't know that. Rav said that, but he reneged. Other Rav, on the contrary, Amri Rav Kahana, Rav Asi the Rav, since when the two great rabbis said to Rav, Dina Lachi, is that really the rule? He has to give back 100% axe? B'shasik. He says, not true. He should be evaluated like a damager. B'shasik, and Rav was silent, which lets me know what he agreed, and he reneged. Shmami no shaman. I hear what? That the borrower also gets the same leniency as the damager. We evaluate the shards, we evaluate the junk, and he only tops it up. Itmar, and we learned the following: Amar Ula, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Ula Elazar said, "Shaman the Ganav Elazar," and he said, "What? He said, incredible. Nobody said this opinion yet. We evaluate even for the two types of thief, and they only top up." Papi Amar said, "Nah, ain't shaman. We do not evaluate for thieves, like we said earlier." The Hilchasa, what is the halacha? Ain't shaman lo leganav lo legazlan. We do not evaluate for thieves, like we said before, not for either type. Aval shoel shaman for a borrower. We do evaluate. Rav Hana, Rav Ami, like Rav Kana, Rav Ami said, they pass in the halacha that the borrower has the same rule as a damager. Okay, Rabbosai, let's now give a summary of some very important laws. Any woman, when a woman gives birth, she becomes unclean. She becomes unclean, but and she's unclean to her husband, and etc. She can't, we have probably if she touches a truma or kachim, she can't touch any kind of holy thing. She contaminates. Good. When a woman gives birth to a boy, she's unclean for 7 days. For 7 days. But then, after the 7 days when she's unclean, for 33 days, even if she sees blood, she's still clean. 33 days. So for a boy, she's unclean for 7 and clean for 33. For a girl, she's unclean for 14, and then she's clean for 66, even if she sees blood. Now, even at the time when I said she's clean, we mean she's clean for what? For her husband. But even that time, she's still usher, for holy things. Okay, but what's our point now? One more. That's one thing. Now, but sometimes, what if you're in doubt whether a woman actually gave birth or not? So when is a child born? If the kid's head come out, a woman gave birth. Or alternatively, God forbid, if the baby comes out in pieces when most of the baby's out, the woman considered to have given birth. Okay, even a dead baby. Okay, so either way, so either the head comes, the woman is unclean either when when is she given birth, head comes out, or most of the baby. Either way, she's okay. We know she's given birth, she's unclean. What do we do when just the placenta comes out? And sometimes the placenta is empty, but we still think we even though we don't see a fetus, we think that the fetus dissolved. You understand? And there's really a fetus in and we assume that every placenta might be a fetus, and not only might be a fetus, it might be what? It might be a boy, and it might be a girl. So now, usually, let's say, yeah. Now, and one more thing, yeah, it might be a boy, it might be a girl. So what do we do? Okay, what do we do? We're gonna have a problem with the placenta coming up. Okay, so now what happens when the placenta comes out and we don't? So we're gonna have to assume that she gave birth. Okay, but we don't know if she gave birth to a boy or a girl. What do we do? Is she unclean for 7, unclean for 14? Is she clean for 33 or clean for 66? What do we do? So now once we spoke about Ula in the name of Elazar, we're gonna have a list of things that he said to hold them together to help us to remember. Remember, I mentioned this a few times. There's a list of things that aren't connected to this discussion. They're connected because the same speaker is speaking. We remember these things that he said in the name of Rabbi Elazar. They're just like what he said before. He said now. Amar Ula Rabbi Elazar. He said Shilya when the placenta when the placenta comes out of the woman just a little bit. Beyond Rishon, on the first day came out a little, part of it came out day 1, and part of it came out day 2. It took a long time for the placenta to come out. Okay, and I don't know if most of the dissolved baby came out on day 1, or most of the dissolved baby came out on day 2. What am I going to do? I don't know what to do. So what do we do? He said, "Monin law min harishon." You're going to have to start saying that she's unclean from the first day. You have to assume that she's unclean, and that the baby that the invisible baby, the dissolved baby was born day 1. Amalei Rabbis, he said to Matai, he said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Are you trying to tell me that you're being stringent, l'chumra? So you have to be counting from day 1. Maybe already day 1, the majority was out. You're not being stringent. You're doing a stringency. It's going to lead to a leniency. Why? Because by starting counting, what on day 1, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Starting counting on day 1. By the time you get to day 14, you're going to assume that that the next day she's clean. You're gonna end up being lenient when maybe day 14 only should be count. Maybe the 14th day only start for the second day. You think you're being a big tzaddik by being machmer on day 1. You're gonna be mako by starting on day 1 that she's tummy now. You're gonna be mako. Be mako that maybe she only became tummy on the second day, and you're gonna already on the 14th day say she's done when she's not done till after the 15th. So he says to him, he says, "You're making a mistake to call Matara Lamarishon because you're going to let her, and when she becomes clean, you're going to become clean for the first day. But rather, what you have to do both. You know, you can't do that. You have to make her unclean from the first day, and you have to count from the second day. Maraba, that's what you do. Okay, lachush, the way that she became unclean, choshesh, you have to wait from the first day. Okay, mimna lo mimna manya, but to start counting the 14 days, you only count. Okay, you only count from the second day. Now, what is the chiddush of Ula? He says they makes a shayabul avad that it's him that he what's he trying to tell me that placenta there's no placenta without a baby in it. He says even a partial placenta tanina we learned it already. Now I want to tell you another thing. You know that when we shecht an animal and we find a baby inside dead or alive, the shechita is good and the baby's kosher. If you shecht an animal, there's a baby inside, dead or alive. Okay, you shecht it, the animal's kosher. But if the animal's born, any part of the animal's born sticks anything out, is not then it's no longer uh, um, uh, um, exempted by the shechita. Okay, exempted by the shechita. And so, if the head comes out or most of the animal comes out, the animal's born. It's not going to be exempted by the. It's not going to be exempted by the shechita. So he says, But he said that having that in mind, I'm going to show you that we already learned that any placenta has to be worried about. Tanina, we already learned it. Asura. If the placenta came out a little bit from the animal, asura b'achila. Even though a little bit of placenta came out, the whole placenta is usher to eat even after we shech the animal. Why? Okay. Simon blah be'isha, because the placenta is a sign of a fetus by a woman, and simon blah behema, and the same thing, and also by an animal. We assume that the placenta had an animal. So you see that what we already learned the principle that what. So we really learned the principle that what that a part of a placenta that comes out is already already has a baby in it. The boy says no. He says I wouldn't have learned it without Ula. Imi maslisin had it come what to the case of the placenta. Amina, I would have said the yeshmikza shayiblo blood. I would have said, you know what? No, the truth is that really you can have a partial placenta without a baby in it. I said, then why did we assert it over there in even after the shechita? Ugzera miksasa atakula. Over there, the whole reason by the animal that we assert it's not really assert, but we said we're going to assert a little. Oh, why? Because otherwise we'll make a mistake. When the majority comes out, we won't say it's usher. So we ushered the mutter case apart, but really it's not true. And therefore Ula had to come. Ula had to come and tell me what? No, that Ula had to come and tell me no, that really the halacha is that even part really even part is truly usher, and not because of and not because because of maybe a hole. And why is that? In the case of Ula, it's clear that we're not doing it to be machmir. Why? Why is that? Because everybody sees that part came out one day and part came out on the other day. So everybody's gonna nobody's gonna think that we're doing a little because maybe the whole, because the whole because we you see that we because we and what do you mean we're machmir? Here on the first day, you have to say already, for example, she's tummy partner. You have to say also that the Tara she did her tummy. So therefore, yeah, 1 second. Here, when it comes to the woman, let me say clear. I'm able to say clearly. When it comes to the woman, when part of her placenta came out, we would never have said that the taharos, that the holy things that she touched are no good from the first day, lest the majority comes out. Okay, why? Because everybody sees on the second day when the whole placenta comes out, then that's what that we make her tummy, and therefore Ula to tell me what that, and therefore Ula was coming to tell me that there's no even a partial placenta without there's no even partial placenta without a baby in it. And even when only a little bit came out on the first day and a little bit the second day, we make the things that she touched Tame from the first day. And in our case, it's clear. For the Mishnah, it wasn't clear. Let's say another thing that he said in the name of Rabbi Lazar. He said, "Bechor, you know that when a woman has her firstborn, we have to redeem that firstborn in 30 days." Now, the question is, what happens? What happens if a baby was killed? Let's say was ripped apart by accident, by an animal, whatever happened before it reached 30 days. So now, do we redeem it or not? On the one hand, it didn't live 30 days. But on the other hand, it would have lived 30 days. It just happened an animal killed it. But as far as being viable, maybe the baby was really viable. It would have lived had it not been killed 30 days. So we learn. He says, Bechar shenitra. Okay, if a firstborn was ripped to pieces before it reached 30 days, within 30 days, ain podino, so we do not have to redeem it. Rabbi Chama taught the same thing. We told Shenemar. How do we know that? Maybe the baby would have been viable. Since it said Pado Tifte, since it says you shall surely redeem, Yochel, I might have thought from the actual language what Afilu Nitraf, even a baby that was ripped apart and did live 30 days, but Shloshim Yon, I would still think that I have to redeem it. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk said, Ach is always a limiter. Chilek, that comes to what? To make an exception. And what? That when no, you should surely redeem, but if the baby is ripped apart within 30 days, okay, you don't redeem it, only the baby has to actually live to the 30 days. Amar Ula, Amar Lazar, he said another statement in the name of the same rabbi. How do I acquire? Everybody knows the simplest way to acquire something is to lift it up. Say, but what do you do with big things? How do I acquire an ox? How would I acquire an ox? Okay, so there's a way to lift it up, but we'll see. But how do I acquire these things? So he said, behema gasa niknes b'mashicha. Big animals like cattle, you acquire them by simply drawing them, pulling them into either your private domain or even to the side of the public domain, a place where you have a right to use it, and then it's like you pulled it into the domain, you acquired it. I said, what are you talking about? We learned that that you don't have to pull the animal. It's enough just for the owner to hand you the rope around its neck or to hand you its mane or whatever it is. Like he says, no. He says, who the Amar ki Tana? He holds like the Tana that says this, the Tanya who learned. The rabbis say, zu, whether it's a big animal like an ox or a small animal like a sheep, the Mashicha, you draw them to you. Rabbi Shimon Omer, zu, Rabbi Shimon says both of them are required by lifting them up. How do you lift up an ox? If you're not a Shimshon Gibor, you just make a platform and walk it up. You make a platform that's high enough, the same way you lift it, and you walk it up. That's how it works. They always have probably big things in Eretz Yisrael, where we want to, we're especially interested in keeping kosher. So the candy companies will buy like these gigantic vats, let's say from Germany, stainless steel vats to make candy. They, holds, thousands of liters. So where's the mikvah? How you gonna towel these men? So what they do is they at the port, they get one of the guys to lift up the whole crate, the thing, and dump it into the ocean. You got to figure out to do a big thing. Okay, another. Let's say two brothers split up the father's estate. What happened was, before they split, they bought clothing for themselves from the estate. Masha Alain, so the clothing on their backs, okay, shaman, you have to go to court and evaluate it because they have to, that has to be part of the division. They have to go say how much they took. Umasha al b'neiim of an ain't shaman, but we don't have to evaluate the clothing that even that they bought out of the estate for their sons and daughters. We don't have to. Why? Because it's a nuisance to bring them to court. They say we can bring ourselves to bring the kids, and therefore we just assume that all the brothers are mutually forgiving. They said, don't worry, okay, whatever you took for the kids, forget about it. Amrav Papa, Pamim Asham Aleim. He says, you know what? Sometimes even what the adults are wearing, you don't have to evaluate. You can keep it. Why? Why ain't shaman? Okay, ain't shaman. Even sometimes for the adults, we don't. Mishkachas law. What's the case where we find it? But because the oldest brother who takes responsibility for being the executor of the estate, the nichlu, because it's acceptable to all the children of brothers, the ishtaman mileh. He should be dressed nicely so that when he deals with the affairs of all the brothers, that he should be authoritative. So then they also mochel him. They also forgive him. Amar Ulam Rabbi Lazar, another statement, the same name, same rabbi. Shomer, Shemaser l'Shomer. Let's say you gave something to one guardian to watch, and he gives it to another guardian. So do we say what? By merely passing it on to another guardian, he automatically has been negligent and will be responsible even for accidental damage? Okay, it's Potter. It's not true. He's not responsible. He always remains responsible for whatever he was originally responsible for. And it goes without saying, when an unpaid watchman has less liability, gave it over to a paid watchman who has more responsibility, so where he has raised up the level of guardianship, it goes without saying that he's not liable. Even a paid watchman who gave it to an unpaid watchman who guarded it properly, the hashda gurui gar where now he is clearly given a lesser level of watching, because the unpaid watchman who's not liable is not going to go out of his way to watch it as well as a paid watchman. Nevertheless, as long as there was no negligence, etc., nami pater, he still remains not obligated. Okay, why? Shahari masal bendas. As long as he gave it to a sane human being, it's fine. Rav Amai says no. You're wrong. Nope. He says when one watchman gives it to another watchman, he automatically becomes responsible for accidental damages, even no matter what. It goes without saying what I'm saying. When a paid watchman gave it to an unpaid watchman, the guri garlish mirasa, where he lowered the level of watching, even an unpaid watchman who gave it to a paid watchman, where he raised the level chayv, he's still obligated. Why? The Amalek, and it's beautiful. Why? Because the owner of the object says, "At mehamantli b'shvua." Here, when push comes to shove, and the shomer says, "Listen, I wasn't negligent. I wasn't responsible." He has to swear. He says, "I was willing to believe. I know you. I'm willing to believe you." Hi, no mamalishu, but the guy you gave it to, I don't believe. And guess what? I hired you and not him, and now you can't swear because you weren't doing the watching. And I can't get him to swear because he's not my agent. And therefore you have to pay. I only believed you, and you can't swear. I want the money. Okay, I don't believe that guy. Another thing he said, Hilchasa, here's another rule. Remember, liens go on real estate, on property. Liens can't go on what? Liens normally can't go on what? On chattels, on movables. When the father dies, the debts go on the land that the orphans have, but it doesn't go on the chattels that the orphan has. Any land that a man had when he took a loan and it's sold, the lien goes over to the guy who bought it. But if a guy borrowed money when he had movables and sold them, the lien doesn't travel with the movables when he sold them. He says you're allowed to collect. A person has a right to collect from slaves to collect his debt. Amalei Rav Nachman Leuli says, Amar Lazi said, did Rabbi Lazar even say that afilu miyasme, that the creditors can collect even from the orphans? Remember, or you can only collect from real estate of orphans and not from chattels. Isn't it a slave chattel? He said, lo. He says, no, he can't collect from the slave. Only what? Only from the slaves that are in the hand of the borrower, not the ones that go to his children. Okay, Gemara says what? He says, and Rav Nachman says, what are you talking about? He says, Minay, to say that he can collect from him, why would anybody have to have told me? It's not a novel point that I can collect from the slaves the guy owns. I can collect the debtor, anything, his chattels, anything, his junk. You can collect anything. You don't need real estate. He says, no, he says it is a chiddush that you can collect from these slaves. Why? The owner, apotike is a contraction. On this you will stand. I say to a guy, I am giving you a guarantee you can collect from this movable from this slave. And what happened? What? Okay, so you're gonna collect it. And he said to him, if I don't pay you up by a certain time, you can collect this slave. And Rabbi Lezer is teaching me that even though you really want the law of a slave is like the law of movables, which cannot be accept a lien, if the lova made a deal and said you're collecting from here, they turn into like almost like the equivalent of real estate, and the creditor can collect. The Rabba, like Rabba taught us, because Rabba said, also if a man made this special agreement, he said, from here you shall collect. He turned his slave into, so to speak, a stand-in for land, and he sold it. The creditor can go to the buyer and collect. Usually, he can't collect from a buyer chattel. He can collect from this slave. However, if he took an ox and said, from this you will collect, then he sells it, the creditor cannot. My time, what's the reason? In both cases, he designated. How come you can turn a slave into land and you can't turn, so to speak, an ox into land? I'll tell you why. Because remember, we have to protect the buyer. A buyer has to always have a right to know what he's getting himself into. And the answer is what? Okay, ha isle kala. When you make an apotiki on a slave, and you then there's a call, there's a voice. The word gets out. The buyer knows that he made a lien on a slave equivalent to land. So he knows when he buys the slave, he has to worry that there's a lien. He says, but when it comes to an ox, less lay kala. Okay, putting a lien on an ox, nobody keeps records of that, and it's not going to go out, and therefore the buyer will be unfairly obligated. It doesn't work. Both sides will call that a daf. Thank you very much. I know it's a big daf, but we caught up also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. These are such beautiful today. It's such incredibly beautiful. Every other line, new breakthrough concepts. These things are earth shattering. Every single one is unbelievable. Unbelievable. The opening problem, I love it. The problem with systems and matter, incredible, because the system has a much different value than matter. How much the raw materials for the NASA's computer? No, millions of dollars. But the computer, but it's many millions more. It's the organism that's worth all that money. You're gonna pay him for the junk? Yeah.
One thing I don't understand is with the dead ox, and you have to take it to Besman. You have it, especially depending on the time of the year. If it's summertime, the time frame is much less than in the winter.
Yeah, he'll have to rush. If it's
I once worked with a guy.
Thank you.
He did a lot of hunting.
Yeah.
And now in New York, the hunting season is from like Thanksgiving through December. And the hunting doesn't, it's cold, right?
Yeah.
And I have to ask him, what from the time that they kill it, the time that you dress it, take it out, how much time? He says between 4 and 6 hours.
That's in the winter. Wow, amazing.
In the summertime, you got to be right there and take care of it.
Yeah, now I get